Okay. Good evening, one and all, and so happy to have you all here with us on this webinar where we have the world-renowned scientist, Dr. Chandrashekar Biradar with us, and he will be talking about urban gardening in the post-COVID-19 landscape. We are extremely thrilled to have him with us, and in spite of his busy schedule, he actually had to skip a very important webinar meeting that he had with, I think, Microsoft, and he has, graciously consented to be with us. So we're really looking forward to, interacting with him. I will just start the evening off with a small 1-minute video from the chairman of our Agriculture Trust of the Art of Living, Sri Sri Institute of Agriculture Sciences and Technology. And after that, we will dive straight into the webinar itself.
Dear participants, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to this webinar on the topic of urban gardening in post-COVID landscape. We are very honored to have Dr. Chandrashekar Biradar, who is the world eminent scientist who will be participating and giving us wonderful insights to the future of urban gardening in the years to come. I thank you all on behalf of the SSIAST Trust of the Art of Living for being in this webinar, and I wish you all very rewarding experience. Jai Gurudev.
So, yeah, we thank our chairman for graciously sending that audio and video message to us. And now it is my honor to welcome Dr. Chandrashekar Biradar. Welcome to you, sir. We are all honored to have you here. And the very first leading question that I would like to take with you, Doctor, what is it in your life that you have done that you are where you are today?
Yeah, before setting my screen, I thank you so much for Dr. Rao and his wonderful the introductions and the way he brought the Seed Saver initiative. That's where I really impressed by his initiative. And Art of the Living, they're doing a lot of this interesting the webinar series. And for me, it's very striking that the Save the Tiger and no one is there to save the bendy app. That's what really impressed me, that one. Thank you so much for providing me this wonderful opportunity to meet a lot of the experts across the globe. And I would start that, like, when I moved from the India to Sri Lanka, I was working with international organizations. From there to I moved to the America, and being a vegetarian family, so that we are struggling with buying some kind of vegetables. And if I go to the market in the weekend, so that you are spend almost like $300 to $400 to buy the organic fresh market produce. For example, a capsicum costed me $1 that time. It's way back in 2007 and 8. And the pound of meat is almost the equal price. I was surprised. How come the vegetables became so expensive? And that is a time when I thought about it. Okay, why not should I start my own gardening? It is a necessity, become my fashion. And so lucky to have, I moved to the Oklahoma because of the New Hampshire is so cold, and I couldn't have enough for the what's called the length of the growing period. So I moved to the Oklahoma, and there we found a wonderful the gardening community. And there's a gardening the network. I was very new to the gardening, even though coming from the rural families. And I studied my education as the forestry and agriculture. Then I wanted to go back to the villages and start the farming. Then I got into the ranking in all India level master studies. Then I went to the Himachal to study the genetic engineering. So there is where I started looking into the plant evolutionary process, everything. While doing that one, then I got selected in the postdoc, the PhD in ISRO, Indian Institute of Remote Sensing, to take up the study on the mapping the biodiversity. It is the international level project by the DOS DBT, Department of Space and Department of Biotechnology. That provided me the ample opportunity to travel across the India, looking different landscape. So after the PhD, so that I come across the discipline of like a agriculture background in the family, then agriculture and graduations, Martin genetic engineering, and PhD in the space research, and that provided me a holistic view of how the systems work. Then I moved to the postdoc into the water management, then to the US for the and the complex system research in New Hampshire. So this is really the provided working in the food security in the global level, how things work. And I'm doing as a professional, doing the remote sensing and space sciences, food systems. And then I started doing my own gardening. I puzzled so that even I am able to grow even small plant. What's happening this one? Why this particular plant is not doing well in the hot conditions? Then I hit the garden community in US in Norman, and they helped me so much, including the Carol and Don, number of people. Started learning, reading a lot of the books. That provided me huge opportunity. Then I started growing a small, I can come across the presentation and show all those pictures. But even started at 8 by 8 square feet garden, end up into the so much of the food productions coming at the small plot. And that really encouraged me that I've started saving so much of money. And other biggest things that struck me and encouraged me to do the gardening. When you started gardening, and whenever come to India, we never get sick because of that. The increase our gut biome. We're working in the garden, eating the healthy food, and traveling across the world. I never get sick. And that is really, really the plus point of the home gardening. And that's what I started expanding my gardening experience and sharing with the friends and designing different things, models across the group and testing the different varieties of the plants in my home garden and telling the people that this works very well in my garden, this tomato did really well. And like that, you have spread this one. And the gardeners are such a wonderful people. When I asked them that I wanted to try the different types of tomatoes and across the people, because the US is the country of the immigrants, the people coming from different, the world, and they always carried their land races, what they call heirloom varieties with them. Then they shared with me nearly about 63 types of the tomato seeds. I wanted to take a spectral signature of how the different tomato plants looks like. And that is also the big story behind that, why I started that when doing it. And then I saw the taste of the different tomatoes. And I saw that, wow, this is the jackpot of the gardening. I started that one. That is where I started the journey into the gardening, and I started sharing that we produce so much of food in 50 square feet garden that enough to feed 4 to 5 families, enough to store for the winter. Then started donating to the temples and the food banks, like that. So this is where I would start my journey.
Wonderful, doctor. I mean, that is so impressive. The amount of time you have spent educating yourself. और आप खुद जो है ना अपने हाथों से, you have worked with your hands, you have done it at grassroots level. ये पूरा home gardening की जो टेक्निक है, आपने बहुत अपनी हाथों से जो है उसको ground zero से आपने खुद समझा. Having this much amount of scientific background, फिर भी आपने एक practical तरीके से जो है ना ऐसी this technology you have adopted it through a very practical means of doing it yourself, which I believe is the only way if you want to learn things like this. Doctor, you had shared with me some very interesting things that you're doing at community level, in city plots, and things. So I'm sure you are quite looking forward to sharing some of the slides that you have. You have a share function, a screen share function, which you can adopt if you need to share. But I would really like our people, हमारी participants को जानना चाहिए कि आप actually cities में, plots में, beach, city के एकदम beach में जो vacant plots है, उनमें जो है इतना काम किया है ताकि जो है ताजा सब्जियां और ताजे उत्पादन जो है अपनी सिटी लोगों को मिले. तो ये इस पे जो है आप थोड़ा सा प्रकाश डालिए. Just share with us your efforts in this direction right now, Doctor.
Thank you, Chair. And in fact, that is what when we started this gardening in the US, and there is the rule that the front yard should be kept neat and clean. Even that time, they're not allowing to grow the vegetables in the front yard. And I moved to some different parts of the world. I see that a lot of the very beautiful turf in the front and growing a lot of the ornamental plants, and none of them are edible or none of them are useful. Sometimes most of them are exotic species. They require a lot of the tending and care and lawn mowing and applying a lot of the fertilizer. In fact, they're drenching with a lot of the urea in keeping the grass green and clean. Like that, I saw that so much of the land is wasted, energy, water, fertilizer, but nothing is edible. Then I thought, why not you just move this into the food productions gardens, and even like a lot of this, the roadside plantations, they come with all the exotic. Of course, they are fast growing, but they're not adding anything to the ecosystem. That's where I started that. Why not the front yard should be the beautiful? Like, of course, the often people think that if you grow the vegetable, they look ugly, it not looks nice. Then I started that, why not you go for this very vibrant colors of the vegetables and mixed together, that looks even as good as the exotic ornamental plants. And the good thing is that while growing that, so you are harvesting them. Whenever extra wanted to do the trim off and what's the prune, and that is a prune vegetable, the things you can eat them rather than throwing them somewhere else. So you can tend the whatever you like it. There's so much of vibrant plants community available, and that's where we started that, encouraging whoever wanted, whoever the people allowed to grow this kind of in their front yard. I thought that, okay, so whenever I'm passing somewhere else, like I see that some front yard is empty, something, I just stop there and tell that, why not you grow some kind of vegetables? Then I told that what to grow, how to grow. Then I tell that, okay, give me your location. Then I tell that what to grow. That's how we started that. And often like the youngsters, they're asking me that, sir, I would like to come back and I wanted to start the gardening, especially in the last few months. Maybe I don't know, it's COVID effect impact or the health, the food, a lot of the chemicals in the food, and people suffering from their number of allergies and the stress level. They wanted to start at these kind of the things. Always advising them, okay, go for this. The number of ideas they're giving. For example, someone wanted in Dibrugarh, wanted to start half-acre land in the city, where near the city they started growing the vegetable. I told them, okay, divide them into small plots and ask you create the WhatsApp group, let the people come in, and then they rent your small plot every weekend. They come with their family, they grow the vegetables, and you can take care of them the entire week. Then they come and harvest, they can pay for the rent. So like that, you can start it also like in cities, often people buy, like rich people buy a lot of the plots and they kept empty, never use them. So that I thought that just you can fence them, plant about 50 different types of fruit trees there until you wanted to build or sell it. By the time like 3 to 4 years, they started producing so much of the food. They become a lungs of the cities. Empty plot becomes lungs of the city. When you're traveling across the aeroplane, I see that in the Delhi, from Delhi to Lucknow, from there to the Calcutta, I see entire Indo-Gangetic plain, a lot of the white spots seeing that one. What's happening? There's so much, why not growing? Then I found that these are the properties they purchased by the rich people. They just put the fence and just left it vacant without growing anything there. I thought these are the things they can start growing, putting the food forest in the cities. They provide a habitat for the birds, and simultaneously they can harvest a lot of the fruits and like that. So this is how I started like community-based systems. Now people like already schools, they started asking me, I wanted to establish the garden for the school. I providing designs. In fact, my daughter became the expert in providing the school garden designs. Now like some of the college universities, they come back. I told that they wanted to start the green campus. This morning, in fact, I was meeting with there's a big webinar with the ISRO community, NISAC, North Space Application Center. Their stop and director came online. They wanted to discuss about these things, how they can turn the campus into like a food garden. So when I see this vast amount of the area, the left fallow, or they just growing the grass is something that I thought is about 200 people living in the campus, with quarters, and they're buying the food outside. Just you can all together and start this community-based garden itself, and you can turn that into the food forest. You can replace those plants with edible fruit trees and herbs, spices, and all the beautiful gardens. And everyone, you can divide that community into like a 10 family, they can take care of 1 week, and their family, but they can harvest together. So they're lucky. They wanted to start at this kind of initiative. They wanted to know within a year, they wanted to build that entire campus in the food garden campus, the green campus. So this is the kind of things is happening all over the world. That's what I would like to say. So there's huge opportunity in the coming days.
Wonderful, doctor. Wonderful. Abhi jo hai, I will just translate a bit into Hindi so that there are a lot of people who would like a little bit of Hindi. तो अभी डॉक्टर बता रहे थे, आपको ये दिलचस्पी ये होएगी कि सुनते सुनते डॉक्टर साहब की बात कि डॉक्टर साहब बहुत सारे कंसल्टेंसी दे रहे हैं बड़े बड़े कॉर्पोरेट्स को, जैसे इसरो है, या जिनके पास छोटे छोटे प्लॉट्स है जिसमें वो कुछ नहीं कर रहे हैं, स्कूल्स है, तो इंस्टीट्यूशंस है, तो जहां अभी वो जमीन का कुछ उपयोग नहीं कर रहे हैं, उन जगहों में डॉक्टर साहब जो है उनके गाइडेंस के थ्रू जो है सारी भारतवर्ष में हर एक डिफरेंट डिफरेंट स्टेट्स में जो है वो एडवाइस दे रहा है कि लोगों को कैसा इसका फायदा उठाए और इसमें सब्जियां कैसे उगाए और ये करे. And doctor, I would like to share with you that this is exactly what Art of Living is also doing. And Pujya Gurudev Shri Shri Ravi Shankar ji is very, very focused on the fact that any land that is left fallow should be put to good use. And our trust, our agriculture trust in the Art of Living, we are always in this quest. So I think there is a great opportunity for us to collaborate, because we have a huge amount of volunteer base at the grassroots level, and हम आपके साथ इस पे काम बहुत अच्छी तरह से कर सकते हैं. And with your expertise and your guidance, our foot soldiers, अपना सेवक जो है ground level पे, ये सब बहुत ही अच्छी तरह से ये सब कर पाएंगे. तो this is wonderful input that you've given, doctor, which I believe Art of Living would be more than willing to take on and move forward. And as a trust, I think this is great potential for collaborating between the two of us. Please continue, doctor.
So thank you, sir. That what I want to do to clarify that I'm not providing the consultancy or something like that. I'm just in the social service. I'm providing my weekend time to help the people to grow. It's kind of this service to the citizens and society. I'm not charging anything. It's a free consultancy. So people
Yes,
shouldn't mistake that.
Yes, at Art of Living also, it is the very same story. Everybody, all the people that you see here on the as co-hosts and me, we are all doing voluntary service, and that's why you know, that is the spirit of the organization. So I think it will be very good, because our reach is so much, you know, so we could sort of channel these kind of things. Maybe we take some you know, basic layouts and designs from you, and then, you know, give it to the gardeners here. And definitely, I mean, we will discuss that much in detail as we go along, doctor. But we are more interested in hearing you talk more about your slide shares and what it is that you want to quickly compact into this presentation.
Okay, thank you, sir. Just I would like to share some of this. Always I see that the pictures tell the 1,000 words. Even I fail to express what exactly the telling. Often I say that my slides is always full of the pictures and photos. I think people, they interpret in their own way. And that I think I should like to share some of the experiments I did. And starting with COVID, that turned into the food gardens and diet diversity, number of things. I would like to share the few slides with you. And please knock me if I'm taking the more time.
Go ahead, doctor.
So can you see my slides?
Yes, yes, yes. We can see your screen, doctor.
So I can run the slides. So
you can put it
so
on
sir,
PowerPoint.
Suggested that the urban farming in the COVID landscape, post-COVID landscape. I think this has been, the movement is already in the flow for since long time, and but that is taking the huge what's called interest among the global community, and a lot of my friends in America and Europe tells me that they wanted to start a garden, but there is a garden supply in terms of the seeds, fertilizers, and pots are not available. They are waiting for the 6 months in the pre-order. That shows that the huge growth in the home gardening. I'll start with that, telling that like when COVID hit and turned into the pandemic, and always there is a lot of questions come. First hit one is the food security and the health. And you all know about the COVID. I'm not going to spend much time on that. So when the COVID is detected and is identified as the pandemic and it's going to impact on the health, and the World Organization first, they recommended that, so that the COVID patient, their first advice is what they should eat before or after the what's called a COVID, the positive. The eat fruits, vegetable, legumes, nuts, and whole grains. This is the first advice comes by the expert, health expert and the WHO. But the media is always, I look like they're mostly they talk about the mask and sanitizer rather than the real food, the build the immunity. So I wanted to share this slides with this. And that brings back to the health. It is a continuity of what we consume. The major part of the air, fresh air and clean water and vital food and good living space and a fit mind and body. So often we neglect these four energy sources and food. Of course, the air and water and all the solid food become part of the food. And I just focus on the vital food in terms of the building the immunity. So when you go back to the ancient system of how our ancestors, our grandparents used to eat across the globe, not only in India or in the US, everywhere, they used to eat a lot of the different diversity of the food. They have the farm are so diverse and they're producing so many different types of the food, and that leads to the rich diet diversity. They're eating number of different diets, almost like every day is a different type of grains that you used to eat, and that really helping to build a what you call gut biome. If the gut biome is rich, and basically that produces all the required the pharmaceutical chemicals in the body to fight any disease and everything happen to the body or outside the system. And that's again basically come back to the biodiverse food and the nutrition. So this is what I talk about the vital food, and I'm more focused on the food because of this is what we talk about the gardening. And then also there's changing demographies, as like taking my example itself, like I'm coming from the remote village, but because of the job, I migrated to the cities, from the cities to the world, across the globe, and traveling across. Then you see that the migration of the people moving from the urban landscape to city landscape in search of the job. And while doing that, and they used to eat a lot of the diverse food, their diversity is reduced when they move to the cities. So this is why a lot of this change is going to happen. And now cities, like most of the elite population living in the cities, often they're not eating that rich diversity. There's huge change in the demographic is going to impact in the future. Already started the impacting, and that's going to the place. This brings up the global challenges in the crossroads of the food systems, where about nearly 30% of the world population is living malnourished or undernourished, and another 30% is the obese. And see that there's so much of the imbalanced food, they're eating too much or too less, or wrong type food most of the times. And really that brings up what we call the huge impact on the planetary health boundaries and sustainable food systems in general, overall the health and the environment. So when I look into the health as a continuum of soil, if you have the living soil, that links to the plant and that links to the human. This is just very deep into going to the sustainable developmental goals, and food is going to play everywhere. If it's deep connected to the food, it's playing almost like everywhere. And this look at the Eat Lancet report, they're looking into what you can see, the dotted line. There is health boundary. Anything you can grow within that health boundary, there's the sustainable. There's no issue of the sustainability on that one. That is where our ancient food system used to, within that boundary conditions. But now because of all the red and brown things is basically the potatoes or the meat and eggs, they're coming outside that boundary layer, means they're not sustainable. It's very clearly that all the experts now look into so much of the literature review coming, research coming, that the recommendation coming by UN, FIO, all the things, they're telling that 50% of our food plates should be the fruits and vegetables, and the 50% should be whatever the grains we're eating that. So they have to move away from the yield-oriented, the green revolutions to the of course that's required that time and meet the needs of the food. And now we have to move the more health per acre. That's what Dr. Vandana always used to refer to that. So this is where we need to move the balance ecosystems that strengthen the food and ecological security. So you can cut down those outside the boundary layers, you can bring back. So what is underutilized crop species that meets the global food demands. So this is what it looks like the global plant species diversity. And I see that earlier the 200,000 species, half of the identified plant species and the terrestrial species, they are edible. Now I see that they're telling that 300 species are edible now. This is already a slide I prepared a week ago. It's already outdated within a week. And out of that, 600 are used as a food predominantly across the world and tribal communities. And out of that, only 100 crops are cultivated on the significant scale. But out of that 150, only 3 crops dominate the food system. That is wheat, rice, and maize. That constitute nearly about 60 to 70% of the food calories. And you look into our food elements, you can deep go into the nutrition value, and our body to be very healthy and resistant to all the diseases, those things, we need to have consume at least 150 to 300 food elements. That means the different types of food eaten in the month time. But now you can look at that one. You can go to the all this bakery or the food markets, and that is only the wheat, rice, and maize. Basically, there are only few elements in the food. That's why our gut bacteria, our gut biome is really impacting. That leads to the health and number of issues. Here I'm giving just an example of we used to go about 65,000 land races of the pulses cultivated across the India. Here I'm giving example of the just the Uttarakhand, the hilly state in the northern side of the India, and the rajma itself, there are more than 50 types of the rajma used to grow. Just think about the rest of the vegetables and pulses, rest of the India and the world, how much of diversity of the food used to grow. And this is what Dr. Rao also talked a lot about and saving the seeds and vegetables. And there is a dwindling diet diversity. That is the impact on the food, the future food. Used to grow so much of the different types of the vegetables and the grains and nuts, and now reduced to few by countable by fingers. So that's where we are going to really facing the future food crisis and also the loss of the biodiversity in general. So that's also not only the plant, because the plant diversity linked to the vertebrate and insect and rest of the other life. And now they're telling that nearly 80% of the vertebrate species declined in the last 100 years. That is huge loss of the birds. Nobody talking about that. We always look at the 1 or 2 major species like a tiger or something, but neglected rest of the real linkages to make that rest of the species survival in instinct. So that is where we need to look at the sustainable diet perspective. And I cover more into the starting with, rather than going to the farm level, I focus more on urban landscape. And just giving an example of the US garden, used to grow about 63 type tomatoes out of the 480 what is mentioned here. And but most of the people ask that how many tomato varieties they know, hardly 1 or 2. Same go with the number of other vegetables. So this really brings back to the changing the diet pattern. That's linked to the cropping systems, demand, and sustainabilities. Now we are growing the crisis of the water security across the globe because of the climate change, and water not available for growing the food. Just giving example here is the water used to 1 plate of the meal, whether if you take a dal in vegetarian meals or chicken, mutton, and beef, see the amount of water consumed that. So you have to move away from that, the empty calorie to the nutritious calories. So that's going to have huge impact on the food systems as well. And the world is enough capacity to produce enough food if you adapt it to the food varieties and the crops. And this is also, like everyone knows, this is not a new thing here. And in order to healthy the weight and healthy living, we need to have a rich in fiber diversity. That comes from the most of the vegetables and fruits what you grow. Here is that the bacteria feeding on the lettuce, the fiber, that shows that how they thrive on that one, that kind of the gut biome. And the colon is where most of the fermentation, transformation of the rich nutrition takes place. When you're not providing enough nutrition to that bacteria, they wipe it out. Then they have to go with what you call fecal transplant and all the things that happens. You often you ask the people, then go to the different cities, they got what stomach bug, because of the gut bacteria is not enough to withstand the different things. Often our germs, the body is made up full of the germs. They are basically they are overruled by our own cells, 1 in 10 germ cells. That means we need to protect our germ cells in the colon that required a rich diet diversity into that. And also the link to the brain and the gut, the biome. So if we eat the very healthy food and the systems, and basically often people come back, stress conditions, anxiety and behavior, they often that link to the way the food they're eating. If they're using the diverse food, basically they are less stressful, and also the mood behavior, like what they call mood swings. So it's all going to reduce that one. So this is basically the huge book on that, the mind and gut. So that basically it's what you eat, you become. If you eat a diverse food, your diverse gut biome, you are the resistance to most of the illness and the chronic illness. And that's where revitalizing the food systems, going back to traditional grains and underutilized crop species, that has become the key thing, like a Siridanya, what used to call like the neglected species or the minor millets. Now they become a kind of the rich nutrition. And often they think that, okay, that's 50 foods is enough to make a future sustainability. I said that is not much. And there's even like one crop varieties that can grow that many foods, but we have, at least we have to start with moving from 3 to 4 to at least 50. That's already a good thing. So that achieve the planetary health and diet diversity, we have to be predominantly what we called the plant-based diets, because of that huge diversity is there, and high diversity and vitality is very important. You often forget the vitality of the food. That's with pranic value of the food and amount of the grain, the food value, nutrition in the food. For example, ancient the carrot, the old carrots are listing a lot of the different crops, the apricots and carrots and the grains. Then what they grow in the natural systems, they have the high nutrition value because of the living in the what's called a fungal network in the soil and living soil. That brings up a lot of the nutrition to the soil. That brings a lot of vitality. The same way go with the seasonalities. I come back to on that once. We have to go the seasonal fruit. It doesn't make sense to eat a watermelon in the winter rather than the summer like that. And local diversity and local richness, the food miles and travel, that all is going to impact. So this is where basically coming back to the soil nutrition, that is the basis for the health, and all that's going to play the huge role into that one. We talk a lot about that one during international year of the soil, then you'll forget that. So this we have to revitalize the systems and go back to the family farming and community-based farming and sustainability. That is the key for the future of the food systems. Often the climate changing happening, everyone know that one year very good year and there is very bad year, and that's where the soil losing its the carbon the value in terms of the soil organic carbon. There's not a good water holding capacity. That leads to a lot of the losses in soil nutrition, shifted the growing seasons. It's going to impact on the entire the soil health and the living systems. This is where we need to go back to the smart family, the farming. Why it's very important to eat the local food, and this is important that like most of the produce, they loses 30% of the nutrients after 3 days of the harvest. Even some of like spinaches, 90% lost within the 24 hours of the harvest. That look into that, most of the food you buy from the supermarket, they harvested at least a week before, like bananas, all those food they harvested before maturity to keep the what's called the viability of those species. And then they put a chemical to keep them fresh. Then they put another chemical to ripen them. So like that, so that you're introducing a lot of this unwanted the food elements into the healthy food systems. You go back to all the system, like there's a proverb in Kannada they call kasa tinu, like in the tusu tinu, the less. That means better to eat less, but the good food rather than eating the more of the junk food. And this is what the most of the world community eating that one into the system. I just giving I did a lot of this the literature review into this different systems, and why the urban gardening and local farms and local farmers and farming communities are vital in preserving the food diversity is that because of the less loss of the food diversity, what's called food losses, nutrition losses, and secondly also the food miles, because of the food traveling from long distances. There's a huge impact on the carbon footprint. For example, I eat the apple grown in Australia, here in Egypt, and somewhere banana from the Ecuador, and see that, but you are capable to grow all that here itself, but you are always the trade, international trade policy and WTO always encouraging that long-term trades. That way you can lose a lot of the nutritions. But you can come to the supermarket and then move to the food delivery systems. Basically, a lot of the value is lost. Not only that nutrition value in terms of they adding a lot of the what's called junk into the system, like plastic and transport and emissions, and all that things going to impact of why this local the productions is going to important. Not only that, connect with the nature is another one of the important things. That is where the citizen science that really the revitalizes earth systems. I always say that old proverb, I don't know who said this, the best investment parents can do for their children is taking them to the nature. Nature can teach the lot of the things to that. That's what's happening in the most of the Scandinavian country. They spend 80% of their school children, their curricula is outside their rooms. That's where they have to be spread across the globe. This become a curriculum in the school systems. And the job, the growing and eating, it is where they start growing them. Like look, just like my daughter, they're eating the rainbow carrots that they harvested in the kitchen garden, and the joy of eating that's nothing can be replaced. If this is 8 by 8 square feet, so much of the food can be grown, and this is what you call when the people talk about the joyness and healthy, and it's basically the growing your own. That's the basis of the healthy living, and see that what we call the joy when the kids they go and pick up their own vegetable, eat. That cannot be expressed in anywhere. Anyway, and this is where when I share this kind of the things to the people, they wanted to start their own garden, urban landscape. Often the question get where can I not have space to grow that one? Then I come out with so many design that can fit well in the walls, windows, balcony, terraces, rooftop, front guard, back guard. Even some people they not anything of them. I designed them they can grow even the bookshelf or like that. You did that experiment. That's growing so well. This is where the few pictures. Showing that like center one is I turned this the garbage the rooftop into a wonderful the food garden here, and then look at the urban landscape. This is I'm showing that one from this is the can you guess anyone? It is the heart of the Bangalore. Bangalore always in India it's considered as the garden city, but they see a lot of the roof it is unutilized. And same thing across the globe. I look into the Egypt here and the Madi where I'm living, 90% of the rooftop is left fallows. Nothing is doing that one. It's empty. It's becoming garbage. Either you can see a lot of this, the modern technology, the disk and everything, or that's becoming garbage, the pits, garbage dumping yard in the rooftop. So these are the huge landscape that turn into the, in the future, in the post-COVID, this should be turned into the green landscape. It can huge impact on the health and diversity, city life, and reducing the heat island effect, and reducing the power consumptions, and that brings the completely new life to the entire cities. And this is where we can bring into those kind of the production systems across the globe, and where the biodiversity gardens, I see that where the health and wellness begins. And the post-COVID is the wellness industry going to flourish. And always we can bring the number of the different way to grow the food. As Dr. Rao mentioned that the example that there's so much of food grow in the small area. I show that how much food you can grow in the small area. And the biodiversity, this is one, always I tell that it kind of the things that nature that follows the production system that should be bring into the what's called a production as well. And the taste and flavor, it originates in the gardens where you grow. And often see that what else you can grow in home gardens. And I say that you can grow almost literally everything possible. And here the example of growing in the US and my home gardens. There is nearly grown about 337 types of vegetable, fruits, the flowers and herbs and spices. And even we grown our own saffron, so much of the growing in the backyard. This is the beauty of growing this one, like the flowers, we never get in the supermarket or the conventional system, the food grown. That amazing, the flowers, taste, color, that you can find them. And this is not only that, I'll give just an example of the tomatoes. And but luckily that still a lot of the farmers and community gardeners and the garden enthusiasts saving those seeds. We need to bring back into the main system of the food productions, and that's become a kind of a where the biodiversity conservations begin. That is not only just the conservation of biodiversity, nature and life of the species, but this is the health of the people and planet begins with growing the urban gardening. This is where we should be investing more into the things, all the things people come back, invest into a lot of this, how to increase the yield, all those things. I say that not only that, but we have to bring back to the last diversity into the mainstream of the farming and agriculture. Often the newbies, they start the gardening, always it comes back to that, it's very impossible, you cannot grow these things without the chemicals. There are a lot of the pest and disease and grow that one. I always say that first you build your soil, it should be living soil, and provide a habitat for the birds and beneficial insects. So those will take care of the pest control in your garden. I always say that it's not one thing, but the good soil is the source of the resistance to the pests and diseases, not only the plant, in turn that links to your own health. So this is where the health begins, thinking about the good soils and the diversity in the plant species. And of course, we generate so much of the kitchen waste, and often that's go to the landfill because there is no segregations, everything dumped together, the edible and non-edible, organic, non-organic, everything together, and just you have to bring back, just reducing your the landfill going to the food scrap turn into the good soil, and you're already cutting down about 30% of your carbon footprint that adding to the city, what's called the garbage and the waste. And this is where we need to bring back the returning the residues, the making use of the crop residues and plant residues to turning them to the good soil and plant. That's number of way to do it. So that's become the basis for the multi-layer garden. Often people tell me that I have this small space, I cannot grow a number of things. I designed that one, I tested the different way. We can grow a number of the species together in the small pot. We can try different things, not only all necessarily all the 5 layers or 6 layers. We try with 1 or 2, then 3, then you can experiment, your given location thing. This is basically what nature grows. If you go to the forest, when I observe that when I'm doing a lot of the forest survey and species sampling and biodiversity counting in the plots, I see that so many species growing in the small plot, 1 square meter or 50 square meter in the tropical rainforest. So many of diversity. I cannot imagine that everything is going so healthy living. And I saw that this is the way we should replicate that into natural farming systems. It's not a new concept at all. It's been going for generation to generation. Our grandfathers used to grow that way. Our ancient generation grew always like a multi-layer farming and multi-layer gardening. It was there. So that just you have to revitalize this one back to the systems. And this is where again, they come back to me that I have not space, I have only small balconies, I not have to do that one. I just designed a small 8 square feet garden during this the COVID time, and it's even only early in the May. And this one spot, we are growing about 50 types of vegetables in 8 square feet. And I mean, imagine that, so that everything is edible there. So we can also look into the food diversity and the way to cook. And even often people do not know that the sweet potato leaves are so edible and so rich in nutrition, better than the spinach and more than the spinach. So that you can eat them, you can cook them, so that you that way, basically you can consume everything that's possible, but you know how to consume and how to grow them in the plant combination of species. So that in small space you can grow much of the food, and basically you can grow so much of food everywhere. That's how it looks like within about 30 days that you can see so much of the food. And then that's not only the rooftop turned into the wonderful living space, while produce so much of food for the people living there, and also like birds and insect and species, a lot of the things together. So this become a turn the urban landscape into the living space that can produce the food. And often the people come back to me that I'm the working person, I not have the time to tend the garden, I not have time to irrigate. If you not irrigate, they'll die. Then we design a number of things, is initiative coming up in the market. You go this one, you can use this the diffusion irrigation system. You're traveling for a week, you can put that one, the automatic irrigation system there. A lot of things is available in the market. There's nothing in the world. Basically reviving the ancient systems, giving the modern touch to that one. You can make it automatic systems. This is what we design. This one basically is automatic irrigation systems when you're traveling, or like everything that irrigate themselves in the diffusion systems, and you connect it to the automatic. I can say details on this due to the time. I'm not going to talk on all those details, but is available in the market. And same thing if you adapt that to them into the farming level, the smallholder farmers, and basically we design the water sense systems, IoTs, a lot of IoTs, Internet of Things, and sensors is available. Bring that to the farming system so that you shouldn't be spending enough time in tending the garden or watering the garden. You just relax and sit there. My concept of the gardening is it's a joy of gardening and relax, do nothing kind of things. What the Fukuoka is the guy who initiated this Japanese scientist into the natural farming. He said do nothing farming. That's what our ancient system of farming is. The farming is basically the celebration of event throughout the year, from sowing to the harvest. It's not the work, it is a celebration event. You have to bring it back that way. And also, like I visited, coming from the rural India in the very remote area, I always see that grown up in such a villages, there are a lot of this, the bath, the water and washed water going to the stay in the city street and the pathways. And just now the Swachh Bharat initiative, the building a lot of the toilets, telling that turn that toilets into your soak pit. And that soak pit you turn into your food growing gardens. Just I'm giving a few examples here, and that is where that's really created nuisance to the urban or city or rural villages. That water is turned into a garden. Only thing you have to make sure that you're not instead of using all the harsh chemicals, you go back to the natural, the bath products and like a washing products, that really not adding too much of the chemicals into water. Else this water entered to the city the sewage system, they entered the rivers, river become polluted. All these things going to happen that. So basically doing this small initiative, you are basically cleaning the entire the river and the water systems. And this water percolate into the soil, then enter into the ground, and groundwater level increase. There's number of ways to do. I'm just giving a few examples where that is the garbage, the what we call the very unlooking or thing system, you turn into the most beautiful the space in the cities. And here I just giving an example of like all the big things starts with a small beginning. This is my experiment when I started growing this. Only I started putting the small, the 8 square feet garden, and that I turned into the like over the season that becomes such a rich the diversity of the food. That's basically it. By 8 the square feet provided enough food for the family in that season. Then that's where I started like multi-layer gardening. That's became the framework. Then I started this like a small the 8 feet by 8 square feet garden, like my first garden. Then I started experimenting, expanding like all this green turf that nothing is growing. There's then basically not edible. We are taking so much of the care. I expanded that into the raised bed. Then that started experimenting with different way of growing the food. That's really they produce so much of food. I even sometimes surprised that there's so much little space they can produce so much food. Think about the same thing in the farming, in the farmers, how much their food can produce. And if you don't like, often the people ask them to go back to the nature, then often they tell their city dwellers, I not have time to go to nature. I tell that bring the nature back to your backyard, bring the nature to your balcony, and where even you can start with a small pot with a few vegetables that already you are contributing a lot in terms of the health as well as the planetary health boundaries. And that's my backyard become the endless research stations started where I exploring a lot of the things and testing different soils and city compost. I'm using that one, square feet gardening, doing that, increasing the beneficiary insect in the garden and taking a lot of the, being the space scientist, the remote sensing, I started experimenting, taking the spectral signals of different species, how I can identify them. And see, that's contributed a lot of things, including the climate change. That created so much of the microclimate, and rest of the sea, the peak of the summer is burning, and my backyard is the cool and vibrant. That shows that how much the one small temperature difference is microclimate. I tested small pots in the balcony that even create the small microclimate. This is what is required in order to revitalize our the climate systems. And the rain, I often think that is so much the green can help in rain. Now is very clear evidence. The rainmakers are the plants. They are the living soils. The living soils and plant literally so much of the spores to the atmosphere that interact with the cloud and bring the rain. Now it's so well proven the system that. So basically this is the biodiversity garden is a multi-layer gardens. It's a heaven for the living creatures. That's provide the living habitat for the entire urban city landscape as well as while protecting the nature and the biodiversity. And this is the same thing what I did there, but I'm moving across from US to the Jordan, from there to the Cairo here in the dry cities. I not have the luxury to have the big backyard like in US, but here I experimented with the growing the balconies and the rooftop and producing so much of the food even in the rooftop gardens. And the diverse choice of food with a great flavor, taste and nutrition. These three things is very key for the urban gardening. And that's what when the urban, the elites, they know that flavor and taste of nutrition of this real food, vital food, that's demand is created very really enrich the farmers. Because of the farmers often grow the organic food, then everybody reject that, okay, it's too much expensive to grow that because they do not know the taste of the real organic food and natural food. One, these urban elites, they look into the flavor. The idea of the starting that one, the provided what's called a pitch for the urban people to taste the real food. And also often because of you are not growing, and we just throw away the food like that the FA estimated nearly 30 to 40% of the food on the plate is wasted because the people do not know the value of the one tomato. Because if they grow the tomato themselves, I'm sure that no one is going to waste the food. This is going to cut down a lot of the food wastage happening on the plate. If the food is wasted on the farm, I won't mind because there's so much animal to eat. But food wasted on the plates after the transportations, harvesting, everything expense is done, and that is our critical what is called a food threshold wastage we have to cut down. And often I see in the farmers in the village the what's called inflations and the price the differentiation. This is only the industry in the world that the note and the producer is not able to control the price and not able to fix their own prices. This is where it really suffers the farmers. And when they know the value of the food and they grow natural food systems and also bring the technologies, they're like a farmers, they bring a lot of the tomatoes when they're based on demand and supply gaps, and often they throw into the roads. Just you can bring this one, how they can preserve the food. They can sun-dried tomatoes more expensive than the fresh tomatoes. I'm just talking about the tomatoes, but it can be applied for almost like every the crops. Farmers can dry them, they can pack them, they can sell into their communities. That way, we're not reducing the wasting of it, but also they ensure that the farmer incomes well kept. And this is what we learned in the urban landscape. This is the change in the consumer.
Doctor, I'll have to interrupt you. We have just 10 minutes left. A lot of people would like to ask questions, so we need to very quickly wrap up this. I need to do a little bit of translation.
Sure, sir. Definitely, sir. Yeah.
Please go ahead.
I'm coming back to your third point on the post-COVID situation. This is where I'm coming back. The post-COVID is where the transformation, what you learn into the edible systems and taste and all things, basically is bring back to what we call back to the future. And wellness industry is going to be the flourish in the post the COVID, and that has become a norm. And everyone switch to the healthy diets. This is where the future of the urban garden is going to play the huge role. And like here, I'm giving an example here from the Odisha, where I'm flying the drone. I found that so many the farmers, they're growing a small patch of the food they grow so much. At least one time they're putting there for growing their own subsistence. And this is what kind of farmers should be doing across the globe. So let's talk about the farm focus and urban focus, what you learn here. And we always talk about the lot of the technology in terms of IoTs, virtual realities, and tableting era. We are now in the tableting era, a data-driven era, programming systems, automation, machine learning, the blockchain, the ledger technologies, all are moving around in the what they call a data-driven ecosystems. And often we neglect the local intelligence, the local. That's where you need to bring the citizen science. I think the farmers are one of the best citizen science them into this data-driven systems, and this is where we can build a conscious systems of the era, how we consciously eat the food and consume and dispose. That is going to play a huge role in the future of the disaggregations, so that you can track into the site-specific decisions what you learn from the local food, and that leverage the technology and the local intelligence. That is the key for the future sustainability that bring to the sustainable food systems and site-specific recommendations, because of what we call ecological intensifications, because the species where they're meant to grow, they have the required less care, so that they have less inputs, basically that produces the most vital food systems. So this required a paradigm shift towards the ecologically viable, economically sustainable options. We cannot think about the ecology without looking at the economy. That's very key to that one. How best you can revitalize the farming system, the farmers, and citizen science, and look into those functional domains, integrations, and the different way that provide services, and that at the farm level to the system resilience itself, so that you have to look into the inclusive systems as our future of the technologies. I'm coming back to the paradigm shift towards, and used to be like what we used to have our plant-based nutrient systems, but you move towards what you call the animal-based protein systems. And that to give you example here, that just 100 grams of protein, and see how much of the impact on the carbon footprint. And same amount you can reverse back to the consumer shift to the plant-based diets, and urban farming is only possible where we can grow a lot of this one. And look at this, how much of the low carbon footprint in the plant-based diets, not only the carbon emissions, but the lowest water use, food miles and inputs, and the waste is going to happen. So this is where our future should be looking at it, and turn that into the lot of the fallows and unutilized space across the globe, from the rooftop to the kitchen, what's called a balcony, to the fallows in the landscape. we can turn that. We are giving example here. You are working on crop diversification, sustainable intensification, rice fallows in India, where farmers after the rice harvested left fallows. We can turn that into the growing the pulses, vegetables. Even you not want to harvest them, they can turn them to the till the soil. They provide the soil organic, rich carbon, and reduce the input in terms of the water and fertilizer next seasons. And secondly, they provide the additional income. In the regular average, they harvest about 8,000 rupees net profit per acre rice. If they put the second crop as the pulses and vegetable, the income almost like a triple. Some farmers even they went to the 8 times of the productions. So this is how you required. There's a lot of the things happening: the global warming and food insecurity, land degradations, hydrological cycle. This is I picked up from Dr. Ratan Lal, world famous scientist. So they're so interconnected each other. And this is driven by the modern lifestyle and anthropogeny. I see that the problem lies in the solutions. This is where I just giving the example of our own farm experiment, where often the cotton grow the long duration crops, and that often there's a lot of the exposed soils left to evaporate the moisture, and you can grow the like a staggered planting in that cotton in the same infrastructure, same irrigation, drip irrigations. You can turn the single commodity to the compound productivity. We can grow so many crops in the same crops that they're staggered in such a way that you can harvest one crop every month, so that farmers can they can have the income and monthly basis like a salaried persons. But while doing that, because of the plants interacting so well, it reduces the pest infestations. You are not probably adding any pest and the insecticides and pesticides and that things to reduce the cost of the productions as well. So this is what I bring back to the what I call a production follows functions. That's the nature of law. And let's leverage the technology. So much of technology advanced available. There's so much of intelligence in the era of the mobile technology. Everyone farmer they feed into the mobile and use that kind of local intelligence and the food demand and the what urban the requirement and the rural requirement, and rebuild the functional agri-food system that can help to bring the healthy planet, healthy living. With that, I say thank you so much. For this one, I'm open to the discussion. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Doctor. We don't have much time for discussion, just 2 minutes. So, because you have spoken in English, let me just, thoda sa aapka, you can just take off the screen share, Doctor. Yeah, thank you. Sir. तो अभी जो भी स्ट्रेस्ड है, पहली बात ये मैं बताना चाहूंगा कि जो भी हमारी जूम मीटिंग वेबिनार के लिए रजिस्टर किया है, उन सबको जो है ये रिकॉर्डिंग का लिंक मैं भेज दूंगा. तो नो टेंशन, यू विल गेट, आप आराम से अपनी समय पे जो है आप पूरा देख सकते हैं. You can go through the recording at your own pace. There are some brilliant slides that Dr. Biradar has put in specifically for rooftop gardening, terrace gardening, home gardening. तो ये तो बहुत ही advanced technologies है, और आप जो है इनको आराम से बैठ के आप आराम से देख सकते हैं. दूसरी चीज जो है, can Dr. Biradar help me set up my terrace garden? इससे बेहतर मैं बोलूंगा कि आप पहले अपनी ऑनलाइन कोर्सेज कीजिए. हमारी टीचर्स है अर्चना जा, दिव्या, सविता बुठानी, ये सब जो है ऑलमोस्ट एवरी वीक जो है कुछ ना कुछ अपने आर्ट ऑफ लिविंग के होम गार्डनिंग कोर्सेज ऑनलाइन चलते रहते हैं. 3 दिन का कोर्स है, 2 hours a day, एंड आप रजिस्टर करके आपको टेरेस गार्डनिंग और होम गार्डनिंग की अच्छी जानकारी मिल जाएगी. अभी अर्चना जी ये रिपब्लिक डे के लिए 5,000 पार्टिसिपेंट के कोर्स ऑर्गेनाइज कर रही है. तो आप कभी भी आप इस पे जानकारी ले सकते हैं, ये बहुत अच्छा रहेगा. और जिनको भी और थोड़ा सा कुछ इंफॉर्मेशन चाहिए तो मेरा ईमेल आईडी मैं शेयर कर रहा हूं, prabhakar.rao@artofliving.org. ये आप अपने रिकॉर्डिंग में देख लीजिए या अपने इधर आप लिख लीजिए. तो आपको जो भी आपका कुछ डाउट्स है तो जरूर आप लिखिए, और कुछ एडवाइस चाहिए डॉक्टर बिरादर से तो जरूर हम उनको पास ऑन करेंगे इसमें. लेकिन जो भी डॉक्टर बिरादर ने बताया उसमें ये महत्व चीज ये है कि उनका कहना है कि आगे आने वाली दिनों में हमारी होम गार्डनिंग और अर्बन गार्डनिंग एक बहुत ही बड़ा पात्र होगा हमारी जिंदगी में. और इससे बहुत बहुत फायदे होंगे। अपने वेस्ट जो जनरेट होता है उसको रिसाइकल करेंगे, क्लाइमेट में चेंज होएगा और हर चीज में जो है हमको फायदा ही फायदा मिलेगा। और टेक्नोलॉजी भी जो है डॉक्टर बिरादर काफी उनका कहना है कि पूरा जो सेंसर्स है, ऑटोमेशन है, ये सब जो है बहुत आगे इसमें मिलेगा आपको अर्बन गार्डनिंग में। और अगले 10-20 साल में जो है होम गार्डनिंग और अर्बन गार्डनिंग एक बहुत ही उचित स्थान हमारी जिंदगी में उसकी रहेगी। So I really thank Dr. Biradar for his wonderful, wonderful discourse on home gardening and the future of home gardening. And what you have said, Doctor, is really an eye-opener for all of us. And we really, really thank you for sharing this in this seminar. All the recording of this webinar will be available. It will be posted and links will be sent to all the people who have registered for this particular webinar. If you have not registered, then please send me an email at prabhakar.rao@artofliving.org and I will make sure that you are put into that mailing list. I thank one and everybody, and especially the Agriculture Trust of the Art of Living, for providing this opportunity. And again, I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Chandrashekar Biradar for his wonderful expose. We have exceeded the time limit by 2 minutes, but I think you will forgive us because we had the most exciting session with Dr. Chandrashekar. Thank you again to Dr. Chandrashekar, and thank you to my team who has put this and helped me generate this particular webinar. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. And indeed, I see a lot of the questions I'm happy to address later. Whenever they want to shoot me, that's fine. I'm happy to take the questions and reply to them. So sorry for that, not able to take all these questions meanwhile. But I'm welcome, as Dr. Rao said, so we're always come back to those questions.
Yes, Doctor. Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you, one and all. Jai Gurudev.